I remember when the calf raise used to feel insanely heavy. Like, this machine made it feel like the world was bearing down on my shoulders. But now, dude, after like a year straight of putting this first in pretty much almost every single leg day, I progressed up to 315 single leg calf raises. And not gonna lie, that got my calves super strong and it made them a lot bigger. Now, granted, they're not great now, but they're definitely way bigger than they were. You know, I never used to have any sort of calf definition, no development, no veins or any of that. And now I got quite a bit of all of that. So, definitely nice to see some growth there, and then, you know, to know what works and what doesn't. You guys will see me going down, you know, getting a really, really, really deep stretch and then only going about halfway up, because that's where the calves generally have best leverage and that's where most of the growth is going to happen. But I would say that's pretty much the agenda for calves. That's what I've been doing. That's what I'm doing today. And I'm probably going to have to gym pin this machine soon to go a little heavier. But yeah.
You're gonna put that on Foot Finder? Just tag me. Just tag my profile on Foot Finder.
So for this exercise, I'm wearing a gym pin seat belt. It works wonders, dude. I'm doing almost the full stack here with one leg. Now, granted, I didn't realize I could adjust the machine a little bit lower, but I tried adjusting it for a better stretch on the next set. But that's beside the point. Still moved great. Was able to get really, really good reps. You know, very, very, very close to failure. Obviously, I hit failure. And you can't cheat whatsoever. You can't bring your hips up at all. It's fully locked in with this seatbelt. You know, I was doing I don't know, like 230 or something like that. I think the stack goes up to 240 or 250. But anyway, though, I mean, like I said, moved great. This has been a great way to even out my quad imbalance. Now, granted, I still have a pretty distinct quad imbalance, especially in the side chest or just the side poses in general. But, you know, it's not as bad as it used to be, and it's definitely getting better. And a common theme throughout all of my lifts is pretty much just majorly isolating every muscle group. I don't like compound lifts that much because they personally never worked for me very well, whether it was related to joint issues or just the fact that the progression potential seemed very low for me personally. Like bench press, for example. I used to do bench press a lot, and granted, my volume probably wasn't the best. I probably didn't really know what I was doing training-wise, but I noticed that it was very hard to progressively overload. And, you know, I've swapped out a lot of different training variables since then to optimize it. So, you know, I'm sure I'll come back to it eventually. But in the meantime, I just do single leg, or, you know, I'll do very isolated, you know, hamstring curls, leg extensions, adductors, you know, glute work on its own. You're not going to see me doing that much leg press or squats. Also, you will notice that I am doing the seat belt on the hamstring curl as well, and I used to think that actually wasn't necessary, but for the exact same reason that it's very useful in the leg extension, your butt likes to lift up just in a slightly different way. Your low back likes to arch to kind of aid in pulling the weight, you know, in curling the weight, and that's obviously super cheaty, and I didn't realize it, but it caused me a lot of, you know, unnecessary low back pain that was completely avoidable just from cheating without realizing it. So the belt definitely makes a difference. All right, so a woman just taught me how to do a glute exercise. I kind of botched it up, to be honest, now looking back at it. I could have got a lot better of a contraction, maybe if I just lightened the load, or I don't know, like if I just shifted differently. I don't even know. Like, every exercise has to feel right, and that's such an individual thing. Like joint angles, you know, limb lengths, all that stuff. That affects how everything feels. So, you know, with that said, I definitely could see this being a pretty effective exercise if I put it in long term. But I just got to figure out how to make it a little more stable, because I felt like my freaking abs were working super, super hard, and my opposite glute was you know, the non-working glute was also working really hard to stabilize. So if I just corrected those two things, probably just, you know, like I said, changing my angle up, I'd probably do a lot better. I'm not sure why, but at this point I had an insane low back pump that made it feel like I could hardly move. And so we added to that by doing kettlebell back extensions. We were doing them, obviously, for glutes is what we were trying to go for. But there was a certain technique that my brother had me use that made the weight feel extremely heavy despite it being light, which was actually really interesting because I hit failure legitimately, even though the kettlebell is obviously very light. And it was from rounding my upper back and, you know, my lower back at the same time, kind of just rounding my back in general and only pulling with my glutes. So not an excessive rounding, you know, making sure my pelvis obviously stayed nice and stiff and stable and didn't move around my low back too much. But, you know, that was pretty interesting. Right off the gate with what I perceive to be one of my better poses. I like the way my bicep peaks look and the way my triceps hang. We're going through these poses quick, man. Front lat's pretty awesome as well. I love the way my shoulders pop lately. You know, quads are getting more and more separated just from getting more size, which is nice. Which is weird because obviously I'm the heaviest I've ever been in my life. So the fact that my quads are kind of more separated than they've ever been really says something. No, obviously I'm not as lean, not nearly as lean as I have been in the past, but it's just cool how size gain works, how even if your muscle isn't as vascular or peeled looking, you could still have just a larger muscle that really shows the shape better. But again, running through these poses really quickly, I got to get better with them because eventually, you know, I probably am going to compete. And I'm not saying it for sure. You know, it just depends on how interesting it is to me. But if competing, oh, excuse me, guys, if competing really piques my interest, I will definitely probably want to compete in Classic. I shouldn't say definitely, probably, but I would almost certainly compete in Classic because I think that's mainly what my build is geared towards. Definitely not open. I don't think I'm as big as those guys. And definitely not men's physique. I could see it potentially, but I feel like I just don't have the build for it. Like, I got longer arms, which is decent. But, you know, the broad shoulders just aren't really there for me because my structure's kind of narrow. So it's about working with what you got. And you see I got a little side leg going on. Got pretty good arms, pretty decent V-taper. You know, nothing crazy yet. We're going to see something pretty crazy on the cut. And, you know, guys, I haven't really talked about the cut much in a while because I was on one for a while, then I just ditched it. Because I was like, you know what, dude, I'm going to enjoy my life. So I think I'm going to start the cut again, though.